And you are live.
Good morning.
Morning.
We are just a little bit past 8:30 in the morning. We have a quorum present. So I call the meeting of the Police and Fire Retirement Plan Commission to order. And let me start off by asking the question whether there is any old business matter to be raised. Hearing none. Ian, let me turn to you for just an overview of the markets that we have been through. No comment on where the market is going, but what environment we are finding ourselves in as we start this meeting.
All right. I'm going to share my screen.
Morning, Kathy.
So in the beginning of my document, I simply put the agenda, and we are going to review market environment, talk about performance of the total plan, the managers. We will have a discussion on, which is a follow-up to prior meetings on the whole concept of active versus passive. We also will review and interview one of the fixed income managers, and we'll review the characteristics of the fixed income allocation in general. And we put together a flash report as of March 31st. And we're going to start with an overview of where the markets were as of March 31st. And, you know, we finished, even with all the challenges in 2020, with a pretty phenomenal performance in 2020. And we've gotten off to really a strong start in 2021. And if you look up at the top of this chart under the year-to-date area, I just outlined it in red. You can see positive returns across the board from public equities, and large cap equities represented by an index like the S&P 500 through the end of March was up about 6% and change. And we've seen better performance coming from smaller and mid-cap companies. You can see the Russell Mid-Cap Index was up more than 8%, and small company stocks were up just under 13% through March. One of the storylines in 2021 has been a rotation away from growth to value type stocks. And you can see the performance differential. As you might remember, the performance in 2020 was hugely in favor of growth. And that was led by the technology type names and those FANG stocks, which we've commented on in the past. But in 2021, performance has been led by the value side of the market. And you can see the Russell 1000 Value Index was up 11.26%, and growth was only up 0.94. I'm going to give an update in a minute, though, and the month of April has been in favor of the growth side again. So then the international markets have been positive, but low single digits. You can see the developed international markets represented by an index, the MSCI EAFE index, Europe, Australia, Far East, was up 3.48, and the emerging markets 0.29. Now, when you look at fixed income, and the fixed income numbers are right below, and fixed income in 2020, we had a great environment for fixed income because interest rates fell and bonds went up in value. The inverse is true in 2021. You've had a rising interest rate environment, and when rates rise, bonds go down in value. So you can see the US aggregate index through the end of March was down 3.38%. And investment grade corporate bonds were down more than 4.5%. The lower quality part of the bond market, high yield, was actually positive, up 0.85%. And the global bond market was down about 4.5%. And one of the statistics I like to point out is called yield to worst. And yield to worst under this column over here is a fancy way to say yield to maturity. And yield to maturity or yield to worst is the yield you're going to get, the return tied to basically the income generation of the portfolio through the average maturity of the portfolio. So an index like the Barclays Aggregate Index has an average maturity of about 8 years, and it has a yield to worst of 1.6%. So if you hold all the bonds in that index for the next 8 years or so, you're going to get about a 1.6% rate of return. That's just reflective of the interest rate environment that we're in. And I share that with you because I am setting expectations for what returns will look like from high quality fixed income securities for the foreseeable future. Any questions on the market environment through March 31? So I have an update for you through the close of business yesterday. And I just outlined in red the year-to-date performance through April 13th is even better than where it was at the end of March. You can see the S&P 500 index through yesterday is up 10.73. You still see leadership from mid-cap and small cap. Mid-cap is up more than 16. Small cap is up more than 13. And you still see the leadership from value being up about 13.5%. But look at growth for the month to date. Month to date, growth is up 6.84 and large cap value is up 2%. So what are called, some people call them the stay at home stocks have done better in the month of April. And you can see the performance for the FANG stocks down at the bottom. You can see they've had pretty strong performance in the month of April, and several of them have had pretty good performance year to date, like Facebook, Microsoft, and Alphabet, which is Google. And then the international markets have done pretty well in the month of April. You can see year to date, developed international is up 6%, and the emerging markets are up 2.9%. And we've actually had a little bit of a drop in interest rates, and that has translated into a little bit better performance, less negative performance through yesterday. The Barclays aggregate is down 2.68%. When you look at the industries that have led the way, the best performing industry group has been energy, and energy has done well based upon the notion that someday we'll be getting back in our cars and driving to meetings and getting on airplanes and flying to meetings. And then financial stocks have also done well. Financial stocks do well with higher rates. Financial oriented banks earn more money in a higher interest rate environment. And you can see financial stocks are up about 20% or 19.2%. One of the things that we always include is the detail for the S&P 500 index since October of 2007, and we detail what are called drawdowns. Those are market losses followed by the upside, and we detail in red anytime we have a market loss of 5% or greater. And then we detail in green the number of days in which it takes to get back to water level. And in general, the gains are greater than the losses. And you can see that from the market bottom in March of 2020, this is in the upper right-hand portion of the page. We've had a cumulative return a little bit better than 80% for the S&P 500 index since the market bottom on March 23rd. And since the market bottom after the global financial crisis in March of 2009, the market has generated annualized rate of return of 18.27%, which is roughly 11 years since March of 2009. So, Joe, do you want me to go on to talk about the managers, or how do you?
No. Let's move on to the next item, the minutes of the last meeting. We are speaking only now the minutes of the open session. These were circulated to members of the commission before this meeting. Were there any comments or corrections to those minutes? Open session only.
No.
Move
A
approval of the
motion?
minutes.
Thank you.
Second.
Those in
Thank you.
favor? Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Minutes stand approved. At this point, we're going to call for the meeting to go into executive session. The basis for that is so that we can discuss the investment of public funds, and to the extent any questions arise, our legal counsel is present and we can ask questions of counsel with respect to any issues that arise. So could I ask that our meeting be set in closed session?
Need a motion.
I move that we move to closed session.
We seconding.
Second. Second.
Anyone opposed? Those in favor? Aye.
Okay,